Okay, great. I think everyone's in now or joining, so I'll get started with the session and then people will fall in to the call as we go through the introduction. So welcome everyone to ACS's Next Emerging Leaders Network. This session is on communication and convenience. It's a topic that I know a lot of you were really excited to explore within this network, and we're really excited to have a great panelists joining the session, as well as insights on communication and convenience from Rosie. So how today's session will go, we will go to Rosie for a presentation on communication and convenience, and then we'll break out into the panel session where we are joined with Meg, Tabitha and Andy, who all come from different parts of the sector and also communications, and will provide some really interesting insights into the topic today. So I'll let them introduce themselves when we go into the session, but after the panel session we will go into our breakout rooms in our usual ELN style, where you'll be able to network with each other and ask each other questions and talk about the topic in further detail. So without further ado, I will pass over to Rosie for the presentation. If you can all keep yourselves on mute, and then there'll be opportunities to take yourselves off mute to discuss throughout the call. Thank you very much, and over to Rosie.
Thanks, Lydia. Hello, everyone. I'm Rosie Wiggins. I'm the research assistant at ACS, and I'm here to give you a rundown of everything we've learned about communication from our recent research. A lot of what I'm going to be presenting today comes from our local shop reports, which is our big annual research project, which we launched a couple of weeks ago. I'll also be covering a couple of bits of wider research, including our community barometer, which is a consumer poll about the public's perception of convenience stores, and a couple of bits from our colleague survey, which I presented here before, but I think the new research can put some findings from that survey in a new light. So I will touch on that as well. But first, here is what we've learned about communication in the convenience sector from our local shop report. First up, social media. It's not surprising that half of convenience stores have a Facebook account for their business. Facebook is the most accessible social media. It allows, it's used by the most people. It has the, more people have a Facebook account than any other social media account. It also allows you to have the most information about your business all in one place. You can list opening times, provide real-time updates in posts, respond to messages, link to your website, everything all in one place. So that is popular with retailers for a reason. We do have a couple of surprising figures in there. WhatsApp is at the bottom of the list, despite being the third most used social media platform overall. So potential opportunity there for more people to engage with that platform. The other surprising one there is TikTok. This year, 2021, is the first year we've included TikTok in this social media question, and it's already as popular as WhatsApp with convenience retailers. TikTok is an interesting one because it is completely visual. It has a wide variety of uses and users, obviously more popular with younger users, but all wanting very different things out of the app. And if you've seen the developments, you'll know that it's incorporating shopping features into the app itself. So personally, I'm very interested to see how that affects the wider retail sector and the effects that come to the convenience sector as well. On the right hand of this slide, you'll see that these are the most common searches relating to convenience stores. And as you can see, most of those refer to convenience stores as a local shop in one way or another. We are obviously all part of the convenience sector and the convenience channel for retailers and suppliers, but it is really important to know that customers don't always make that connection. When they're looking for our sector and searching it online, they are using the term local shop. So that is a really key term in terms of communicating and online presence. If you want to be found by customers, then local shop is more frequently searched and might be the way to go online. Moving on now, again from our local shop report as well, I just want to highlight a few bits of data here which indicate that convenience retailers are picking up on this huge trend towards online commerce that we've seen throughout the pandemic, and the way that that swing interacts with communication as well. Almost half of convenience stores now have store websites, and around 15% have mobile marketing platforms or loyalty schemes. So despite convenience being a primarily physical retail sector, retailers are finding ways to reach new customers and to maintain the relationships with customers in new channels, in new areas as well. It's also relevant to note that around a third of stores now have in-store Wi-Fi, which is a great help in providing a seamless transition between physical retail and online retail. So customers can come into stores, do their shopping, have a conversation with you, and follow you on social media all in one interaction. That seamlessness is becoming a particularly big talking point in the online commerce conversation, especially relating to the way retailers communicate with customers. Next, I want to touch on communicating with different audiences across the sector and what we've learned from our research about those different audiences. Firstly, I want to look at communicating with your community, with the people around where your store trades. Almost 60% of retailers agree that their business's standing in their community has improved over the course of the pandemic. As we've seen, there has been a huge increase in people staying closer to home, obviously out of force at first, out of necessity, but there's been quite a high percentage of people now intending to stay close to home and intending to spend more time in their community and support more local businesses. We also know that around a third of those consumers choose which local businesses to support based on their community activity, so how engaged and active businesses are in their local area. This is what I really want to hit home here, communicating that locality, again, that local shops phrasing. Consumers want to see that engagement. Consumers also told us that convenience stores had the most positive impact in their neighborhoods out of any local businesses. So communicating that locality, that positive impact, and sharing any outreach into local communities, that is a really great message to be communicating to the community at the moment. The next audience I want to look at is customers, specifically the people who are already coming into your stores and doing their shopping. This year, more and more customers are telling us that they are beginning to build relationships with the people who work in their local shops. We've had fewer customers in that last column on the right there who say that they don't really know the people who work in their local shop at all, don't really have interactions with them. That is down this year, and we've had more people tell us that either they know the people who work in their local shop very well and have regular conversations, or that they maybe don't know them so well, but will occasionally stop to have a conversation over the checkout. Again, that shows that shift to locality and more engagement in local neighborhoods, but this time coming from customers themselves. So that is a great opportunity for retailers there to begin communicating that locality. And the final audience I want to look at is each other convenience colleagues. This is from our colleague survey, but I do want to highlight it again here, particularly as it's relevant to this conversation. We've seen workload shoot up over the past year. Stress levels were very high throughout the pandemic, but working relationships within convenience stores were still really, really strong. On average, colleagues ranked their working relationships at about a 7 out of 10, with a fifth of colleagues ranking it 8 out of 10, and another fifth giving them perfect scores, ranking them 10 out of 10. There has been a lot to communicate to colleagues over the last year, be it in stores or with suppliers and external partners as well. Everything from new regulations to health warnings. Mental health has been a particularly big topic to talk about this year. It's really seen a spotlight throughout the pandemic as stress levels and workload increase. So it is really wonderful to see that the relationships are really, really strong despite all the challenges over the last year. And finally, from me, I just want to touch on the communications we use at ACS. Communication is such a vital part of what we do, from organizing events like this to sharing all our research with government and with industry bodies. Firstly, social media is a really key part when it comes to events and organizing groups. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, all of those kind of things, and we use those to promote events. We use Twitter to live tweet along with events, so people who can't attend can still be engaged in those events. And we're also making sure that we're really easy to reach and can easily reply to questions or posts and open up those two-way conversations. We do also cover policy updates on social media, but to provide more details on those updates, we use press releases, which obviously get shared with trade media and with national media too. In terms of my research, particularly things like the weekly research updates, I like to make things really, really visual and really easy to understand at a glance. Despite being a research person, I know I really struggle to get through large chunks of text. It just does not engage me at all. So I try to make sure everything I present is really easy to grasp and something about it pops and grabs people's attention. And the same goes for any kind of one-off graphics or one-page summaries that we release. These are designed to be accessible and used for reference. So all of the data there is presented in a really succinct and clear way to get that information across really easily. And finally, of course, we have our website and member portal, which the ACS team has worked so hard on to make sure everything is easy to access, easy to understand, and really comprehensive. We have everything from our induction to convenience videos for people who are brand new to the sector, all the way to our research section, which has the quarterly updates of things like investment, the business index, and the optimism index too. So the website and portal are a really great central hub for retailers and suppliers. So that is everything from me. That is a look at everything we've learned about communication over the past year and a look at how we communicate at ACS too. I hope you found something useful in there. If you have any questions about the research, you can always drop me an email. But for now, thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to Lydia.
Amazing. Thanks, Rosie, for sharing so many.
You're just on mute, Lydia.
Thank you. Always the way. Thank you very much, Rosie, for sharing those insights. Communication has been particularly important over the last year with our colleagues, but also with communities as people have been isolating and experiencing a whole breadth of things they've never experienced before. But now we're going to go on to the panel session and have a look at communication and confidence with this within our own roles. We're very aware that from across this group, we've got people who work in stores right through to working for suppliers or for retail businesses themselves too. So it's going to be really, really exciting panel discussion to look at this. I'd also like to thank all the attendees who shared or submitted questions to ask the panel, and we've received some great questions, and I really hope we do those justice and discuss them in the way you want them to be discussed in this panel session now. So if I can invite the panel to join me, and we will do some introductions. So Meg, Tabitha and Andy, thank you. Perfect. We'll start off by going around the room to introduce ourselves, your maybe business you're from or what you do, and also just if you have any other background you'd like to share to do with confidence and communication. So I'll go to Meg first. Thanks, Meg.
Hi guys, lovely to be here. Thanks so much for having me on the panel today, and thank you, Rosie, for that lovely presentation. I'm Meg from Markettiers. We are a broadcast specialist. We work from research to production to kind of getting people into TV and radio, but also storytelling. So how do brands actually want to be seen and heard by consumers, by businesses? So I work at Markettiers, but I'm also a presenter. So I'm used to being in front of the camera also. So if anyone wants any kind of confidence tips or anything like that, hopefully if I'm not rubbish today, you can come to me afterwards and I can help you. But yeah, looking forward to chatting through the questions that you guys have shared.
Amazing, Megan. Thank you very much, and excited to hear the insights from your experiences with, very, very in front of the camera communication and that sort of style too. If I can go to Tabitha next, thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. So I'm Tabitha Hunter-Smale. I'm Head of Business Development for Sugro UK. So some of you will be familiar with buying group. Sugro is a national buying group, and I basically oversee the membership. So lots of opportunity for hopefully effective communication, and I hope I can share some of that with you today.
Thank you very much, Tabitha. And last but not least, Andy.
Hi everybody. Andy Pheasant. So I work for Suntory. So we're the company who make Lucozade, Ribena. I've worked in the wholesale and convenience sector for over 15 years now, across different accounts, different channels, but mostly wholesale and convenience. So a lot of experience with tricky buyers, different contacts throughout the industry. So hopefully, some of that experience I can share today.
Great, perfect, Andy. And I'm going to come to you first with our first question. This question looks at how we communicate, how communication differs when we talk to someone on our own level, of our colleague in our team, but right up to the CEO or someone senior within your business. I was wondering if you could shed any light on how the communication differs for you in that situation. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for me, it's really important that you have a layered contact strategy throughout any of the customers that you're dealing with. So for me, it's been really important throughout my career that I'm talking to people who work on the shop floor, whether that's in a wholesale depot or in a convenience store. And you just find even little things like asking people their name, saying hello to them. Some people who don't have much human interaction throughout the day can go a long way. So making sure that you're doing that. And remembering little things. It was always a great tip that I got given, was remembering little things that people tell you. So if they're like going away on holiday next week, or my daughter's starting school, just make a little note. And the next time you go back in, how was your daughter's day at school? It can just show that you care and can help make their day a little bit better as well. And just really helps with relationships. And then moving up the chain. So when you're meeting with sort of head buyers or CEOs, it's a completely different meeting. It's more about planning, making sure that you've done all that preparation, that you can really be top line, get those details ready, speak a lot clearer and a lot more confident about the subject and the agenda. But I also try and gauge that mood really early on about whether they want to try and have some chit chat and get to know you, or do they want to share more about their life. If they don't, move straight onto the agenda. There's some people who are just there about business, but try and get people out of the office as well is another good thing that I try and do. Try and have meetings where you can maybe have some dinner or just even a little walk with people. Certainly with the pandemic, it's really led to people having to be flexible. So when we maybe weren't allowed to get into offices to go and see people, just saying, can we meet you in a local park? We'll go and we'll have a chat, and just flexing the style to different customers.
Great, thanks, Andy. That's really interesting. And like Rosie shared in her presentation, sort of job satisfaction can really be increased by having those conversations and making sure we remember those small details to make people feel like they're cared about in the workplace, whether that's, store colleague on the shop floor, but also in offices, and then up to CEO too, but obviously reading the room to understand what sort of tone of those meetings are is really important. Meg, I'll come to you next, because I know that you have experience talking to different audiences. I was wondering if you could share how your experiences with different audiences means that communication differs. Thank you.
Yeah, completely. I can indeed. So for me, it's about kind of mirroring that behavior as we were just talking about there. If we're in more of a, rather than TV and radio, if we're talking about more kind of in the boardroom, it's mirroring that behavior, but it's also not losing your personality. I see with a lot of clients, I see with a lot of people that when we start talking to senior people, we suddenly go, oh my goodness, I can't be myself. I can't be my own personality. But that's where it's completely wrong. You should still obviously be formal and respectful to anyone that you're speaking to, but you should really bring to life that personality, and you should talk to people in the way that you usually talk to them. Like, who do you usually remember talking to? It's someone that's got that energy that kind of excited you, and you remember their personality. And I think when you're thinking about different audiences and connecting with them on different levels, you have to think about their role. So for example, if we're talking to Sky News Ian King, we're talking to a lot of C-suite staff, we're talking to people that run businesses, and it's exactly the same as in a business meeting. You think about their role and their aim. They are implementing the strategy. They are right at the top there. They want to have that kind of top level information that relates to them, and if we're talking to people on the ground, how do we connect them on a consumer level? How do we share that information in a more simplistic way and in a way that connects to them? What are they interested in? Are they interested in what's happening in their local community? Yes. So it's just kind of tailoring it to that behavior. But yes, something that I would always say, never ever lose your personality when you're talking to senior staff. Don't let that hinder you. Just be more informed and know your stuff. I think that's where the confidence comes from. Like, if you're feeling a little bit stressed about talking to someone more senior or having those business meetings, it's just knowing your stuff and being able to deliver it, because that's where your confidence will grow, and you'll be able to build that up.
Great, thanks, Meg. That's really interesting, and obviously you have a breadth of experience in that sort of breadth of communication to different groups of people. So that's really interesting. Tabitha, I'm going to come to you next with the next question. Obviously, you have a lot of external meetings in your role with other businesses, and sort of communicating across business to business is something that you do a lot. I was wondering if you could share some of the key principles and communication methods you may use to communicate effectively and accurately in those meetings when maybe a business doesn't necessarily know exactly what you do, or you're introducing yourself, or just maintaining those relationships between businesses as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Lydia. So I would say the key thing is just to listen. That is so hard for me. I'm a naturally chatty person. I'm very energetic. I'm very passionate. And I've really had to learn, especially over the last few years in this role, just how important it is to listen to what other people need. So in terms of my industry, yes, I'm out there, I'm meeting a lot of clients, I'm meeting a lot of suppliers. So I really need to understand what they're looking for and what their barriers to sale are. So I would say definitely listen and pause a lot. You know, it's not necessarily always about you and your opinion in the nicest possible way. As I said, I'm very chatty, so I can talk for hours about my dog, but nobody, bless him, wants to hear about Caesar. They actually want to tell me what their issues are and how we, I guess, how we can overcome them. I would also say, maybe just try and take some of the emotion out of some of the meetings. And again, you know, I'm in my mid-30s. It's taken me a lot of years to get to this point, but I tend now, and obviously it depends on the audience, but I tend to err towards a more factual meeting initially. So think about what you want to get out of the meeting, what you want to get out of the relationship. Are you relationship building, like with a supplier, or are you asking for something? And if that's the case, you need to go in with a more factual approach. So I guess for me, it's definitely about which hat to wear at which time as well.
Great, no, that's really interesting, and I can agree with you there on being someone who's very chatty and sometimes needing to just get to the point instead. Andy, I'll come to you with the same question on sort of key communication methods you may use in your role and how you find them to be effective, or any reflections you've had on that over your career so far. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, back on. There we go. I've certainly seen the way in which you have to communicate with people has changed massively, certainly over the last 18 months as well, with people being more time pressured, more busy. The rise, as we saw from Rosie's slide, the rise of different types of media as well. So I find that retailers are really hard to pin down to a certain time frame. If you want to get a lot of retailers on a call or something, they're not always going to be available on that. So you've got to maybe look at a different way of doing it. So whether you record a meeting and then send it on to them, or use things like WhatsApp so that they can look at messages in their own time. So just flexing your style, and also involving others in the way in which you're going to do it, so the way that you want to communicate as well. So picking up with other retailers about how they like to be communicated to, and just tailoring your approach to that.
Great, thank you.
Comes into what Tabitha said, listening to what the customer wants.
Yeah, no, great. That's really interesting. And I think ACS itself, with sort of the breadth of events that we do, we have found that although the attendance has stayed very high when events have been online, also people watching them back via the sort of links afterwards has been really, really good tool for those retailers and staff members, colleagues who can't actually attend at the time, because like you said, time has been very stretched and pressured during the last year. Megan, I'll come to you last on communication methods and what's effective, if you could shed any light on that. Thank you.
I can indeed, I can. So I think when it comes to this kind of thing, I'm going to echo the points that have just gone across there. Listening is absolutely key. Like, a lot of us think that good communications is the person that's talking all the time, the person that's saying all the points, but actually listening and thinking, actually, do the people in this room right now, or the person that you're talking to individually, feel heard? Do they understand what I'm saying? And that's where you really kind of connect with people and you build those relationships. Something else with communication, I mean, keep things succinct. So don't try and get all of your points out in a rush all at once, because you think, you know, especially in this virtual world at the moment, you know, we have 30 minutes back-to-back meetings all day, and suddenly you're like, oh, I've only got 30 minutes with this person, I need to get it all out. You absolutely do not. You can say your points, make sure you have your own time. And that's what we find with broadcasts as well. People feel like, you know, you've got 2 minutes on LBC News, I must rush through everything, but, you know, take it at your own pace. But also don't over egg your point. If you don't know the answer, or you don't actually necessarily feel very expert on what you're saying, there is no harm, especially even if you're talking to a CEO or anyone in the business, say, actually, someone's more expert on this than I am. I'm going to speak to them about it and we'll come back to you. Don't ever feel like you have to go down a rabbit hole and talk about something you don't feel comfortable with. That's just being honest. And 3 words I'd always say for communication: it's humility, it's empathy, and it's simplicity. If you have those kind of front of mind with anything that you're doing, it's usually going to go quite well. Something that Andy was talking about there, the ways of communicating have completely changed in the last year. And we touched on it then, like, virtual, what we're doing right now. Small talk suddenly goes, we don't have this kind of community where we're going and getting a coffee at, the morning, breakfast, whatever it is, and communicating with people. Don't lose that small talk. Still have that kind of community and conversation with people, because it puts people at ease and it makes you feel more confident and in control of the situation.
Great, thank you. It's really interesting. And I know from my own experience working in policy, sometimes I have had to learn to be like, okay, I don't know that detail, let me go find out, rather than just trying to, bumble my way through. And it's a very, I think it takes confidence to be able to make that decision to then say you don't know. And that's like one step in itself. But it's really interesting what you shared there. Thank you. Tabitha, I'm going to come to you next to look at how more sort of confidence side of this conversation, and to see how you think that confidence affects customer service. And I was wondering whether you could share any experiences or anything you've learned in terms of how your confidence has helped customer service or vice versa. Thank you.
It's very difficult, isn't it, when we talk about confidence? I think not everybody is naturally confident, and a lot of people are confident in different areas. So I find it really interesting when people come to me and say, God, you're so confident. Actually, I'm really not. I enjoy work, and so I'm very confident in what I do, but socially, actually, I struggle. Networking, I hate it. It does not come naturally to me. So I think it's about understanding really what you're good at and where your value is as a person. So in my job, I recruit wholesale members, and their turnover is anywhere between 1 million and 100 million. And I remember joining the organisation and thinking, this is just enormous. And actually, that's quite intimidating. But when I thought about what I'm good at and what value I bring to the role, then that really gave me confidence. So what I would say in any organisation, in any job role, is think about the 2 or 3 things that you're brilliant at. Think about the value you bring to that role. You don't have to be good at everything. There's always going to be someone else that will complement that role, but focus on that, hone those skills. And I think with that will come natural confidence.
Great, thank you. That's really interesting. And I think there is a big role for self-reflection in this to be able to help you to be more confident when you communicate. So that's really interesting. Andy, I'll come to you with the same question. So around confidence in customer service and maybe any experiences you've had there too. Thank you.
Just going to point out, it keeps cropping up on my screen that I'm having internet issues. So if I disappear for a bit, that's why. For me, confidence, I found it really helps with planning. If you plan, you can be more confident. I can't see anybody moving. Can you all hear me or not?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. You're just a little bit frozen.
Maybe Andy has gone. No worries. I'll go to Meg and let Andy join us back. So if Meg, from your position, if you could shed any light on confidence and maybe not customer service.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll finish up at what Andy was saying there, like learning your stuff. That is genuinely so. People say to me, you're a presenter, you must have so much confidence, like you must love being in front of the screen. Every presenting job I do, before I go on, I think, why am I doing this to myself every single time? Like, you hate this, but it's turning that kind of stress and that fear into excitement. I have to do a little bit of self-talking to myself in the mirror and say, you actually love the fear, you love it, and you come away from it afterwards thinking, actually, I can do this. And a lot of that is becoming an expert on the topic. Now, I'm not saying you need to learn absolutely everything in your role, but I could be presenting about football and tomorrow I could be presenting about business, but it's learning things about that you feel like you're connected to the conversation. So, what podcast can you listen to around the topic that has something that you can just drop into conversation and suddenly connects you to the people that you're around? And something else that I wanted to kind of bring across is people don't like being in awkward situations or stressed. So how I think the confidence comes in those situations, whatever business meeting it is or whatever situation you're in, is how can your confidence kind of make people at ease? And that's literally learning people's cues. So, you know, for my role in TV and radio, I might have a CEO about to go on to a live interview and, you know, they can't talk, they're really stressed about it. How do you make them feel confident and at ease and relax them? And that, I think that comes into every kind of walks of life or any kind of business interview or anything at all, is just learning those cues and knowing when to kind of step in and speak. Also, you know, not teach people to suck eggs, but just have that conversation and open it up. But yeah, my one thing for this is kind of learn your stuff, because actually that gives you the confidence to be able to speak on certain topics.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I'm going to come to Tabitha with the next question. And this looks more at in terms of confidence when you're in a position of authority, so maybe a manager or a team leader, so anything from someone being maybe leading the shift in a store, but right up to being a manager, maybe in your position too. And I was wondering how you have any ideas on improving confidence and communication in this position of authority, because obviously, as Meg said, is really, you know, important balance to strike of being helpful, but then also not being patronizing and teaching to suck eggs, which is a great phrase, which yeah, so on that, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Lydia. So again, I would just go back to really listening to the team, to those surrounding you. I think it's always easier actually in any organisation if you've worked your way up, because you really genuinely understand the struggles that you might face. I think if you come in at a higher level, of course, there's going to be challenges. You won't understand necessarily everything that goes on. I'm currently actually doing a leadership and management course. So something I would say is you're never too old to learn, and keep that really fresh. Always think about, you know, different courses or online sessions that you can attend, because you get other people's perspective and point of view. And I think that's really important as a team leader. Something I would say is try and surround yourself with a good team where you can, and definitely set clear and tangible KPIs for your team. That will really help manage, I guess, personnel, but also conflict. Don't be afraid of conflict, but make sure that you're really aware of how to deal with that and handle that. So again, that might be that you need some training, and that will give you a lot more confidence in terms of dealing with and looking after your team. Definitely listening to how your team feels, so obtaining really regular feedback and making sure that they feel they have a voice. Just know that you can make a difference to those individuals within the organisation as well. But the last thing I would say is absolutely be human. And I think Megan talked about having humility, but don't worry about being friends with everybody. They're not the same. And actually, sometimes I think friendships can cause unnecessary issues and problems in an organisation. So yeah, be approachable, be human, but don't worry too much about being friends with everybody.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. And I think that there is, you know, something from learning from the people around us. If we, you know, have a situation, we can speak to maybe another manager or another colleague who's been in a similar situation, and sort of asking those around you and asking for help, even if you're in a position of authority or management, is also you know, okay, and it's good to learn from our peers for sure. Megan, I'm going to come to you next on building relationships and having the confidence to do this, and then I'll come to Tabitha and sort of ask maybe more on the sort of building relationship with partners and suppliers side. So come to you first. Thanks, Meg.
Fantastic. And just to add to that last point, the last question as well, lead by example. No one wants to work with people that they don't actually believe in and think that they're kind of there to support them along the journey, like take them on that journey and be there to, that will build your confidence in itself. Like, you know, as Tabitha was saying then about objectives, set clear objectives and move with that person along those objectives. So then, you know, when they're actually striving and reaching them, you're winning at the same time. So that really does build up confidence also. Yes, moving on to how to build relationships with suppliers and partners. Two things: earn their trust and be candid. You know, get to know them. You know, you don't have to be best friends, but it's understanding what their pinch points are. I find that with clients across the board. Like, if you understand where their stresses are and where their concerns are, even if it's, you know, not just the campaign at hand or what you're doing in the store that day, it's understanding those pinch points, and that will really connect you to them. And information is so powerful. Like, you know, you don't have to be their best friend, but at the same time, if someone comes into the store the week before and says their dog's not very well, if you bring that up, and actually ask how they're doing, it connects you. And, you know, if you need a favor a couple of weeks down the line, maybe they'll be more willing to kind of talk to you about that because you have that more personal connection. And obviously empathy. You know, people remember the good and the bad. So the great situations and the really awful ones. So if someone comes in and they've done a bad job on something, or, you know, something's gone wrong, screaming and shouting at someone, they're going to remember that. They're not going to want to help you down the line. How can you put yourself in someone else's shoes, both good and bad, so that you can connect with them in a good way rather than them remembering the awful stuff that's happened? They would be my points.
Thank you very much. And Tabitha, to you, and then I'll come to Andy on this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be keen to know Andy's opinion here, actually. I talked about factual relationships earlier, but actually when I look at supplier and partner relationships, I think I have a very different approach. I think it's probably warmer, it's more personable. My job is really to understand my member and the supplier businesses and how I can improve those. And you can only improve those through, I guess, honest relationship. So it's really about working together with both of those parties, understanding their individual needs and hurdles, what makes them tick, what they're really struggling with in that individual business, and then really putting together a joint business plan of how you can work together. And it's got to be very consistent as well. One thing I would say is it's not about having a meeting once a year, putting together a joint business plan, and then having no communication, because you don't get anywhere. So you've really got to have that consistent and regular approach with both members and suppliers. But yeah, I mean, Megan's talking about if someone's dog's ill, and I think Andy touched upon it earlier, just remembering those small things about your clients or your customers that you can then bring up at a later date to show that you've really listened and that you genuinely care. I think that's how to build that long-lasting relationship, and definitely delivering results will always help. It will definitely make people warm to you as well.
Great, thank you. And Andy, if I can come to you last but not least on building relationships with suppliers. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, yeah, it is absolutely showing them that you care, showing them that you are their representative within your business. So going that extra yard and delivering on what you promise as well. It's as simple as that. You've just got to show that you are fighting their cause for absolutely everything. But also, just talking about the networking side of things as well, is making sure that when you're in a networking situation, you're not just a passive attendee, actually be active. So don't just be there for the sake of being there, have a reason for going there. So Sarah's messaged me to see if I'm hungover. I'm not hungover because I was at an event last night, but I went to that event last night with a list of people that I wanted to see and that I wanted to meet, that I'd maybe had conversations with over WhatsApp, but I'd not met them personally. So go there with a purpose, meet them, show them that you're interested, do a little bit of research before that, learn about their business so that you can go up to them, tell them what it is that you respect and that you've liked about them and why you wanted to meet them and what you want to do moving forward. So yeah, that's a really important thing for me, is be active, not passive when you're in these situations. And another thing that I was taught by one of my favorite managers that I had was when you're in whether it's even in your own offices, meet 2 new people. Make 2 new friends every time that you're there. So just grow that network, let people know who you are, because you never know when you need them. You know, it's harder to ask for things if you haven't got that relationship.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know that on the last point, particularly for those on the call who work in an office environment and maybe have been working at home, that meeting 2 people when you actually do have your office day, if you're doing hybrid working, is even more important because you have less face time with potentially new contacts and new connections as well. So really utilising that time we have. But also for those in stores, if an area manager or someone comes in who doesn't come in every day, making sure if you have the time to speak to them as well, that's really, really valuable. So we are now going to come on to the final question. So the insights have been really, really useful, and I'd like to thank you again all for joining. But if we come on to the last question, it's more of something of a self-reflection. So if you could tell yourself at the start of your career one thing to do with communicating and confidence with it, what would it be? And I will come to Andy first. Thank you.
Have confidence in what you're talking about. I think it probably hit me when I was working for Red Bull, and we have monthly account check-ins, and you would have quite senior people in that room, and it hit the penny drop with me that I knew more about what I was talking about than anybody in that room. And I was really confident that, do you know what, I know this account, I know my business inside out. And that has really helped me moving forward since that day to just know that if I'm putting in the time, the planning, the preparation, I know more about what I'm talking about than anybody else. So I can put some slides up on a screen, not have to look at them, look at the audience, make them completely buy in and understand, and have that confidence and trust that what I'm telling them is the truth.
Yeah, great. That's really useful. And then I'll go to Tabitha and then to Megan. Thank you.
Told you Andy was really organised, didn't I? So for me, actually, this is really interesting. I was talking about this only this morning. One of my first jobs when I was 18 was as a receptionist, and I was absolutely terrified of the MD. And upon reflection, there's no such thing as a scary person. Everyone's human, everyone's got their own agenda, everyone's got their own list of priorities. So I think, especially when you're looking at a more senior member of the team, take away this idea of, they're scary or they're intimidating, and really replace that with, they've obviously done extremely well. So what can I learn from this person? You can even make them your secret mentor. They don't need to know, but study their behavior. They've done exceptionally well. The fact that you feel intimidated by them means that they're obviously an incredible character, or they're very good, they're very results driven. They've achieved fantastic results within your organization. So swap scary with they've done incredibly well, and what can I learn? What can I take from this person for my next role?
Thank you. That's really interesting. I know, as someone who gets a little bit of imposter syndrome, that's definitely an important point for me to take away from this conversation. So thank you. And then last but not least, we'll go to Megan. Thank you.
I agree with both of you. For me, my biggest thing is I'm a massive perfectionist, which is a great thing and a really bad thing at the same time. So I started up in London when I was 18 in the media world, and I used to realise I was holding big board meetings with 20 people on a Tuesday every week, and I'd go away from that thinking, oh, all the things that I've done wrong, rather than actually, you've absolutely smashed it and you're doing a great job. So my biggest take is, don't always kind of focus on the bad, focus on the good. That builds your confidence. You suddenly realise how great you are at your job. But you are allowed to make mistakes, but it's learning from those mistakes. Don't keep doing the same mistakes over again. Do it once, learn from it, move on. And I was doing a little round robin this morning around my company, a couple of senior people, to get what their thoughts were. And one that stood out for me was someone sent a quote, and it's David Ogilvy, and it says, if you want to be interesting, be interested. So I think if you apply that to everything you're doing, people are going to want to listen to you, and you're going to do well.
Thank you very much. And I love the quote too. No, that's really great. So Andy, Megan and Tabitha, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I feel like it's been a really useful conversation from sort of all angles and views, which has been hopefully very, very, very beneficial for those on the call. And I'd like to thank again attendees for sending in your questions. We're now going to go out into our breakout rooms where we will discuss this more in smaller groups for around 15 minutes. So thank you again to everyone who's attended, and also to our panelists. It's been a really, really useful discussion, and let's go into the breakout rooms. Thank you.